Hey guys, what is up? This is Matthew Davis, me once again. Welcome back to another movie review, aka After I Saw. This time is going to be on Red One. Now, this is a new Christmas action comedy film. In this movie, we follow Dwayne Johnson as a man who is very close to Santa Claus, as he works for him, and when Santa Claus gets kidnapped, he cannot go and find him alone, as he teams up with this guy who's been on the naughty list for his entire life, for 30 years as a matter of fact. And he's also a father, and randomly they decide to get this guy because apparently he's a big part of the naughty list. Yeah, I didn't really know a whole lot going into this movie. I mean, I did. It was advertised quite a bit, and the movie is actually going for a very big budget. Like, on the internet, I saw it was going for $200 million, but that had to be an exaggeration. And if it is, then chances are this movie's probably not going to do that well this weekend. But yeah, this movie could turn out to be two different things. It could become like a new Christmas classic, you know, a fun action comedy film filled with laughs and fun action, or it could just be a generic action comedy film with very few laughs and not having a whole lot going for it. Unfortunately, I feel like it runs into more of that category, as I didn't really feel like there was a whole lot to this movie, because I didn't really feel like there was a whole lot to this film that I remotely found myself enjoying that much of. I mean, in terms of the action, there really isn't a whole lot of action, which was kind of surprising. I thought it would focus a lot on action. Now, there is action sequences, but there wasn't really a time where it gets completely chaotic until like close towards the last act of the movie. I mean, in the trailer, we see these snow, monsters or whatever, but even the action sequence to that, I felt like was far more on the humorous side rather than the fun side. Now, of course, because you got the director of Jumanji: Welcome to the Jungle, which had a bit of action and comedy mixed in, and of course, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson is in this film as well, it's no surprise that they would try to go that route in this film. I didn't really feel like there was a whole lot to the film that I could necessarily say was something that I'm going to remember in the next 30 years, because there really wasn't a whole lot to the film. Now, I didn't hate every single aspect about this movie. There are some times where it can be entertaining to watch. Just watching, The Rock and Chris Evans interact once in a while does seem pretty charming at first, but the humor, most of the dialogue, it wasn't really painful. It was just like, okay, so that was added into the movie because there needs to be a joke. Because, we need to have both the action and the comedy. And there's a part to the movie where, we're supposed to sympathize with Chris Evans' character because he was a bad kid back in the day because he, refused to believe in Santa. And years later, he's a dick for almost, it's kind of confusing why. But then, we see he has a kid and he's kind of a deadbeat dad. But that aspect of the movie, I felt like was kind of a little bit forced in. And while the movie does have a message to what exactly it's trying to say, I'm going to be honest, I wasn't really connected to it that much because I felt like it was done better in some other Christmas films. But, J.K. Simmons plays Santa Claus, a more buff and tough version of Santa Claus, and I liked seeing him in the movie. I would have liked to have seen more, but of course he was kidnapped throughout most of the movie, so of course he wasn't. And actually, this was not the first time he played Santa Claus. He also voiced a Santa Claus-like character in the Netflix animated movie Klaus, which I think is great, and I definitely recommend checking this film out for the holiday seasons. I consider that an animated Christmas classic. One major thing about this movie that I have to bring up, I don't think anybody can ignore this, is the effects. I think they're atrocious. Even for a movie on this high of a budget, like, it's just baffling to me. Like, there's this car sequence that happens, and it just looks horrendous. And there's this one going on the back of the sleigh and all that, and I'm not going to go too further in because I'm sure other people would want to see the movie, but yeah, most of the effects, they look bad. When it comes to some of the makeup effects, they look pretty decent. But when it comes to, digitizing, creature effects, like there's this polar bear in the movie, yeah, it didn't look all that convincing either. And I kind of would have liked to have seen more of him, believe it or not, because I felt like he would become like another Rocket Raccoon, and we all love Rocket Raccoon, but yeah, so some of these other characters, I feel like it just mostly focuses on, just Chris Evans and Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson because they are the stars of the show. Also, the movie's length. It did not need to be over 2 hours long, but, that includes the credits, so it's like an hour and 50 something minutes. But in the end, Red One, I didn't really find myself enjoying a whole lot about the film. It's not a painful movie. Like, it's not a completely atrocious film. It can be enjoyed if, you don't really care about a good storyline, because, I don't feel like this movie was trying to do that whatsoever. It's basically just rescue the guy, but of course watch out for baddies, and yeah, and it does try to have some morals to it, but I didn't really care much of it because, I didn't really find myself, being fully engaged with, the action or the humor, because, it's PG-13, and, it has to be as family friendly as possible, to appeal to that action comedy thing, that almost anybody can enjoy, unless, well, whatever. I don't really need to go too further deep into it. All I'm really saying is I didn't really find myself enjoying too much about it. But, in terms of this being an action Christmas movie that is far more focused on Christmas than something like Die Hard, I think I would much prefer rather watching Die Hard for the holiday season again than this, because, yeah, a new holiday classic, this certainly isn't. If I were to recommend a modern Christmas movie that also has action and bits of humor in it, I definitely recommend checking out Violent Night. I thought this was a blast. I thought David Harbour was very entertaining as Santa Claus and being a very violent version of Santa Claus. Yeah, and I actually connected with, the heartfelt moments with this movie, despite the fact that it was for this little girl and not really anybody else. But of course, I reviewed this movie 2 years ago, but, I'm still recommending it right now because, this movie was a lot of fun, and I certainly wouldn't mind rewatching it for the holiday season once in a while. I'm sure some people will probably have some enjoyment of the film because I'm not saying there isn't anything to like about the movie. There are aspects that I definitely feel like will appeal to some people, but for me, who didn't really expect a whole lot, I can't really say that, this is something that I would probably watch again because, well, you get the picture, you saw the review, so yeah, I don't need to say anything else. But anyways, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys later. Word out.